If I may, I'd like to tell you how I met my friend, the King. And I want to tell it to you as a story. I've met actual kings in Africa. I've met lords in London. I've met US presidents. I've met prime ministers. But my very best friend is the great emperor who governs all of those kings and all of those rulers and all of those dignitaries. This is Jesus, the Anointed One I'm talking about. Jesus the Christ. He is the greatest friend to mankind. He is the sovereign of eternity. He has absolute power. He owns every asset, every natural resource, every gem, every piece of precious metal. He owns every animal. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns the souls of every man, woman, and child. I was brought up a, quotes, Christian. I had parents who had been saved not long before. Certainly my mum had, but they were naive as to the danger that my little dark soul was in. I heard good values in the home. My mum was diligent in that regard. And when I was tiny, I heard this small whisper calling my name. But my nature from young was broken. It was sinful, it was dark. And I grew worse and worse, even at a young age. I became disruptive, attention-seeking. I became deceptive. I began to cheat. I began to lie. I began to manipulate people. I was pining for pleasure, but I was such a rebel. Nobody told me what to do. I was proud. I had started on a journey down into a pit, on this spiral staircase that descended. But at first it had handrails. It was light. It was okay. It seemed good. There were signposts telling me that everything I wanted was down here. So I started on my way. By the age of 11, I was in deep, deep trouble. But one day, my mum took me to a meeting in a room. That's all I remember. I sat on this chair and I heard a missionary lady telling of the wonderful works of God that she had seen in India. I felt an inexorable drawing. I was riveted, fascinated by what she was saying. I'd never heard anything like it. And it seemed to be real. And I heard that small whisper calling again. And I felt cords gently wrap around my torso and my limbs and gently pull me towards what she was saying. But I soon forgot, and I was soon distracted again. I was thirsty, and I would get my thirst quenched my own way. So I went looking again. By the age of 12, I was in even more trouble. An older girl, much older than me, decided to corrupt me. And she took my hand and she led me further down those steps into that pit. And I was still going to church, but it was purely social for me. It was to see what girls I could hook up with or send notes to during the service. I never knew anything of this King's power. I never knew a thing about his presence. I never felt it once, except maybe just when I was 11, maybe just when I was a little boy. I knew nothing of his personal love, and I didn't even realize what I didn't know. And down I descended these steps. And they told me that I was heaven-bound. They baptized me. They got me to pray. They got me to ask God for a prayer language, which I made up. They seemed happy. I looked good. I even read the Bible so I could argue with atheists. I took the holy things of God and made them into an idol of myself so that I could, by my knowledge, be applauded. But girls and having fun were the only things that really mattered to me. My quest for pleasure, my quest for peace, my quest for happiness and to be liked and to be loved were insatiable. I was so thirsty, and I would seek that drink my way. I soon tired of this girl. I discarded her, as everyone around me did. But it was getting dark now, really dark. I'd been pulled so deep into this pit, down these stairs. I then began to wander the streets, hoping to meet some girl who would answer all my pining. This is how desperate my young soul was. I began to pursue darker and darker wickedness that is unmentionable. And as I descended these steps, they became more and more slippery. And suddenly I slipped and I lost my footing and I fell over a precipice. And I fell and I fell and I fell for years, it seemed. I didn't even know how long I fell. Turns out it was years. And suddenly I hit the stairs way, way, way down in this dark pit. Injured, broken and bleeding. But did I turn and look upward? No. There was a stench so vile in this place, a stench of sulfur coming up. But I pressed on, so thirsty. I will have my drink, and it's down here. I became such a hypocrite, a master pretender. Everyone around me thought I was a good Christian boy. I played piano for Jesus in church. I was patted on the back and told, "Wow, so good to have you on board, coming to heaven with us." But I was staggering, I was falling, I was bleeding, I was infected. I fell into more wickedness, if that were possible. And I had such a stubbornness in my soul, such a haughty rebellion. By now it was too dark to see where I was going. I was on my knees, feeling my way down these stairs. The stench was almost unbearable. My own stench was unbearable. There was no water in this place, nothing to quench my thirst. I'd become so debased and debauched and so vile. It was like I was licking the slime off the walls, the slime of the filth of everyone else who'd passed by this place. Just to survive, I was emitting some kind of dark vapor that poisoned everyone who came into contact with me. And it was so lonely there. There was not one true friend. I passed many on the stairs because I was more eager for darkness than they. And down I crawled and slid and rolled and fell. By now I was dragging my body, so weak, but so stubborn, still rebellious, still determined, and yet ashamed of what I was, but never admitting it. I never once looked back up for the God that I had heard and read about. Never once did I look for him, because there are none who seek after God. There are none who do good. No, not one. There is only one seeker, and that wasn't me. And as I lay on my face in this place, barely able to lift my head, suddenly a beam of light hit the ground in front of me, and it lit up the rim of a well. I'd heard about these, but I'd never seen one. And I heard a voice. It was the voice of a preacher. I don't know who he is. I had no idea who it was. But I was in a service and I heard the voice of the preacher. And he said, "Come, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And he who has no money, come, buy and eat." But his voice soon became another voice. It changed, and I heard a different voice. And this was the voice of the Lord of the well. And I heard him say to me, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water." I couldn't believe what I heard. And he said, "Whoever drinks of the water that I give him will never be thirsty again." Oh, his voice, it was like golden bells to me. It was like the sound of many waters. It was like the roar of a lion. And all at the same time, it was that same small whisper calling my name. And in that moment, right in the center of my chest, my heart changed within me. And in 1 second, it dawned on me that I was a traitor, that I was an enemy to the Lord of this well, that I was vile, that I had committed high treason against the emperor and his government. I had set my life to undermine his kingdom and his rulership. I had set my purpose to turn my shoulder against him and to defy him. And I realized there was no remedy for me. And it would be impossible for me to climb all the way back up there. I couldn't. And then I realized in the same moment that the Lord of the well had dug this well with his bare hands, and he'd perished while doing so. I realized that he had killed himself so that I could receive a drink of water. I never knew this before, and it was horrific and terrible to my soul. I shuddered a deep shudder, the shudder of a condemned man. But in that same moment that I realized all this, I felt those same cords that had gently entwined themselves around me all those years earlier begin to draw me, drag me forward towards the well. It was the same voice I'd heard years before. I recognized it now. And I knew if I called to this one, he would have mercy on me. I knew this because I knew that he had died digging the well for me. It wasn't for anyone else. That's how I knew. And I realized I'd killed him. And yet he lived. And in that moment, I reached out my hand, quivering and trembling, barely able to lift it from the slime and the mire in which I lay. And he took it. He took my hand, my filthy, wretched, broken hand, and he did something I'll never forget. He put a cup of this well water in my hand. He still had to hold it, mind. And he lifted my hand and this cup to my lips, my broken, parched, bleeding lips. And finally, I knew a love that I had never known. I knew a love so overwhelming. I knew a love so profound, so unshakable, so different. As this water passed my lips, past my swollen tongue, and it ran down my sandpaper throat. Oh, I'd never tasted anything so sweet. I had never tasted anything so cool, so quenching, so utterly changing. And in that moment, the King became my friend. And we have been friends ever since. And inside me, there was a decision. I turned and I looked back up the way I'd come, and I started back up these steps. I was unwilling to descend 1 millimeter further. I said, that's it. I will not go down another step. And thank God, suddenly in that moment, I felt the King, the Lord of that well, take my hand again. And I was instantly translated into this gorgeous meadow, which turned out to be a sheepfold. So beautiful. It was full of flowers, and the wind was caressing the grasses. It's like nothing I'd ever seen. And I looked at my hands, and my filth was gone. My leprosy was healed. The burning searing that I had done to my conscience that left marks all over me was reversed, and I had the skin of a newborn baby. And I looked up and I saw the distant glow of something on the horizon. And I inquired of the Lord of this well, what is that place? And he said, oh, that's my city. I'm the builder and the architect of that place. It's the place where righteousness dwells. And I said, but it's so far. I don't think I'll ever get there. And he said to me, he said, fear not. You're a friend of God now. It'll be okay. It will take time to transform you, but I'm going to present you faultless there at that place. You have to be changed so that you're fit to enter the gates. But I've not done all this for you to not get you there. And I learned from him. When I look back over my days, my 15 short years on this planet, that I'd had no idea that all those years Satan had been sending his emissaries, women, men, culture, to kill me, to seduce me, to end my days. I had no idea that he had protected me from the creatures of the shadowlands. And I learned that the Lord of the well had never once left my side. I didn't know he was there. At least I did. I turned my back on him so many times, I didn't realize anymore. And he said, "Come, let's walk." And I began to walk this narrow pathway with him. It was called the King's Highway. It's very narrow. There weren't so many people on it, but I met many over the years that I've loved and known. They discovered the same things about the Lord of this well that I had discovered. And I found as I walked this narrow highway that his rod and his staff guided me. They gave me such comfort because I knew that I could never step off this highway without him letting me know. And I found that when he spoke in the night hours, the pathway was lit in front of me. It was like a lamp to my feet. And we have remained friends ever since. I have strayed off that path sometimes, and I have grieved him. But I don't want to do that, because when I think of what he did for me, I just want to walk next to him the whole way. I don't want anything else anymore. What a friend we have in Jesus. What a friend. This is my friend, the King. I'm friends with the King. There is no one like him.